Welcome back to the Tough Love Podcast with Dr. John O'Connor. Today's podcast is sponsored by MedRay Laser and Technology. Matt, what's going on, brother? Let's get started.
Doc, good to be back. So let's dive right in. Back from Las Vegas, Parker's seminar. Tell our listeners what it was like, what you learned from it, what made you even go out there for it.
So Parker 2024 Invictus was absolutely amazing. The reason for me being out there was to bring Dr. John O'Connor, Velocity HP Coaching, to represent MedRay Laser and Technology. And AJ and Josh and the team were absolutely amazing in really centering the entire booth around myself and how we portray, how we treat with, how we advertise, how we put that product out there. And I have to say, I felt extremely appreciated and, a ton of pride in like if you're playing for the Yankees or somebody like that, like I wanted to show, you know what I mean? Like I definitely wanted to show up for them.
It's the big stage.
And I wanted to be on point. And I have to say because we worked on the schedule together. And I'm always an over-deliver guy, right? And I think I had 2 30-minute blocks, and I probably spent 8 hours there between, if not 10 to 12 between the 2 days. And the one thing that I would say to anybody starting a new business that is based on intellectual property or teaching a concept, you have to put yourself out there. And it was amazing because I'll get into another side shoot of where we're going down in Fort Lauderdale for another coaching opportunity. You have to be relatable to people from all walks of life, all parts of the country, from the nooks of Kentucky to the hills of, Colorado to the sun, the beach of California to the how you doing, New Jersey, New York people. And switching personalities and switching modes was something that, like, the first day was a little bit of a challenge and like exhausting. And then the second day I had the opportunity to hear David Goggins and hear him speak and be so genuine. And probably the epiphany that I had with him is that David Goggins uses the word fuck as a noun, pronoun, adjective, and he is real AF, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that, and I've read, his books, I love listening to him when I ever catch him on a podcast. And, what I love about him from being a coach is that his following comes from the fact that his whole creed, like his whole motto, is don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. And the other thing that I thought was really intriguing, and it brought me back to being at Monmouth University probably 8 to 10 years ago, and I had to speak in front of maybe 2,500 to 3,500 kids from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and I was terrified. And here I am looking at David Goggins, as he says, self-proclaimed hardest man in the world. And he hates speaking to people. He hates being up in these big groups. Right. And I think actually a couple of years ago, he actually took himself off that speaking circuit for that reason. And, the one thing about it was, he said, because people don't want to hear about him studying or whatever he's doing right now, that's 6 hours worth of misery. And it's going to be like, who's turning the page for that?
They want to hear what makes them better, what makes them money, and makes them succeed.
And they want to hear why he's so hard and why he's so tough. And that motivation that he has, and I think all of us in lesser degrees, have that in them. And, for myself, I looked at it like, when I get out there to coach and teach, I had 2 modes, right? One was presenting to, a decent sized group, and then the individual component. I found myself enjoying the individual component, which I normally don't like, and showing compassion, showing an understanding. A couple times, people are looking at us and, when I'm at seminars, I'm a watch guy, I'm a shoes, clothing guy. And the people, I think they're measuring you, right? Especially depending on where they come from in the country. And I'll lead with the realness to say, guys, I remember being at Parker 15 or 20 years ago, and my kids were babies, and we were on our ass. And I was training all the time. I was well received. Parents were sucking the life out of me, training their kids, and we were essentially broke. And I was there watching these remarkably successful people that couldn't outwork me. And I'm saying to myself, I'm just not focused. I got to refocus on what matters and not focus on, something that might be old that I got to like an old hurt that I want to like replay and reset and redo.
You have to evolve.
And when I was there, fast forward now in 2024, and, one of the key, the director of national sales said, Dr. Connor, we would love for you to be in our circle of tables next year. I was sitting there and that just resonated and like hit that. I'm like, obviously I can't have you guys out me on every trip as much as I would love to. I was like, wow, we just started this business. And yes, we're not looking at the balance sheet saying we got all kinds of zeros and we're rolling in it. But when you see national sales guys that came from, massive distribution companies and taking over, companies that do $100 million in sales a year or whatever the number was, but it was extraordinary. And saying, we want you to be part of our team.
Right.
What you're doing and the message you're delivering is relevant.
That's enough to hear right there.
And so I think that was a great thing. The other thing, we hadn't met, right? We've been on Zooms. We were prepping.
Yeah.
We had a ton of like whiteboard chalk time, if you will, for prepping to be with MedRay Laser and Technology. And I loved how hardcore AJ was, right? As we're sitting on those Zooms in the first
Tough
2
love.
minutes. The first 2 minutes, AJ, you felt all the attorney in him. And I was like, wow, I was a little guarded at first. And I think he was setting the tone like, hey, listen, don't mistake my kindness for weakness.
And to me, that's how he respects you and, Velocity HP Coaching representing them.
Well, that was it. And, there were a couple moments where I caught the team, the MedRay team kind of watching me in action. And it felt like a sporting event. I spun around, they walked off, and we were high-fiving. More so that what I loved, and it was very similar to a recent podcast we did talking about the community, that they loved how we touched the pain points with these practitioners. And one woman came to mind, and really cute lady, as far as just her demeanor and what she does, pediatric practice up in New York State, pretty good volume, successful practitioner. And she was staring at the laser, like it did her wrong. And I looked at her, I was like, oh, do you have one of those? And she's like, yeah. Oh, okay. Is it broken? No.
It's collecting dust.
And I was like, okay.
What's up?
Well, I'm not a mind reader, but, I'm like, but I'm guessing you're not having the success I'm having. Why don't we talk?
Right.
And she's like, and then literally like, she just poured it on me. She was upset. Right. And I related to a story that I'm going to put on social. And I told her, I shared a story about my son.
Yeah.
In talking about Johnny, I was saying, we've watched him so many times, and I've watched him probably as much out of the eyes of Doc as I've watched him out of the eyes of Dad. And one of the things that I felt like in so many people is that she needed to find her superpower. And that I said, I was like, it's amazing by just handing somebody a wand or some type of a lucky penny.
Now, was she solo? Did she have
she
team
had practitioners?
with her,
she said some pretty interesting things. She said, she's like, they were getting so busy they needed to grow or they needed to break apart.
Right.
Like, in other words, so the one practice, when you say, go over to, like, say if Mark's one practice and you're one practice, they had to say, okay, he's there and you're there.
Right.
And kind of divide and conquer, right? And there'd still be partners, but just not enough room to see the patients.
Yeah.
Or invest in themselves, take a risk on themselves, and open a bigger clinic and serve more people in the same space during the day.
Got it.
Of course, I encouraged them to do that. I said, if it makes sense with the cost, that might be the way to go, right?
Slow growth.
But, with regards to circling back to my son, and it made sense to her when I said, when no one's watching, or when he's in the really more so, it doesn't care when no one's watching, but when he's in the right headset, he's running, throwing, catching, hitting, taking extra bases, all because of where his brain is. When his brain's not there and he's second guessing himself. Now all of a sudden, you went from, even David Goggins said this in the morning, he could either wake up the 300-pound fat guy that had to drop 120 pounds before he got into the Navy program that he wanted to get into to ultimately become a SEAL, or the 182, 6-8% body fat, hard as nails, tough as nails, MFer.
Yeah.
That's the toughest man in the world kind of MO. And, I think everybody has to have that. And that was the message that I gave her. I said, hearing you and the second guessing and the doubt, I would struggle. If you walk in the room, to me as a healthcare provider, I want your absolute best.
Yeah.
I want you to say with such conviction that, I'd rather say you can't afford it, but I believe whatever you're saying, you must believe in it, because I'm amazed with the level of energy you're delivering that, right? And she actually started to get emotional, in that moment. And she had a few minutes, again, it's continuing education seminar, right? So she had to go somewhere. I probably had about 5 more minutes with her. And in that time, I believe her name was Emily. I was like, Dr. M, I said, if you don't mind, I said, we're family ready, right? I said, Dr. M, I said, the biggest takeaway is, I flashed on my iPad or the MacBook, whatever I had, about the benefits of the Class 4 laser. And, she was talking about the analgesic effect. She says, is that your one trick pony? I said, well, here's 15 more things to talk about it. I said, how many people on your team? I have a CA that does sales. I have da-da-da-da. I said, awesome. So on Monday when you get back, bring a huddle. Screenshot this to your phone. Tell them that you're going to run, a program with the laser for the next 4 weeks. Put on the whiteboard. Talk to them about the benefits. Talk to them about where they can find it as far as where it's mentioned by a medical, testing, center or organization like a National Institute of Health or something like that.
Yeah.
That's endorsing it and saying the medical effectiveness, right? And gave her all these ideas. And literally, if the desk wasn't as big as it was, I would have a chest bump and a high five. She gives me a double high five. And AJ and Josh were absolutely like, this is it. This is what we have to do. If we can capture that in small groups, which then spawned into us saying, hey, listen, I realize there's a need. All these companies that sell do a great job, and that's their job. That's
They
their
have
vertical.
amazing product.
They have amazing product, but the customer support in their mind is for repairs, not using the product.
And that's what they do.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. That's what you do, right? You provide it and you service it.
Right.
Understood.
Yeah.
Where we come in, is
SEAL Team 6.
Yeah. We're going to come in and show them exactly how to use it, how to monetize it,
Yeah.
And again, when we say monetize it, it's the practice of healthcare. We're not trying to rob the patient.
Right.
We're charging what's a fair and reasonable rate for a service that gets an amazing outcome. And when you start there, in the education process, I feel like the patient is so appreciative as opposed to where you're rushing them and going through. Because that was a big thing that I found was if I spoke to 400 doctors and we talked about intakes in the first process, and sometimes people say this is boring, but I don't care whether it's a server coming up and, they're all over the place and not telling you, if you're so laser focused within the first couple minutes with the patient, when they're really a consumer at that point, you don't know if they're coming. They might not know 100% they're coming.
Right.
But when you take that information and you let them know this information is priceless.
Yep.
And so imperative that we get it exact.
Cuts your exam time down by 25 minutes.
100%. And it allows the doctor to get right to the problem.
Yep.
And when it gets to a patient education, especially like in our system, where they're giving him more education, they're shedding even more sunlight on, hey, these are your pain points. These are the modalities and how they can benefit you. And this is what we want to do. So I have to tell you, that part of the experience with the seminar was absolutely fantastic.
Right. And Doc, I want to get into, growth as not only as Dr. John O'Connor with Velocity HP Coaching, but as a speaker. We're not even 6 full months into Velocity HP, and you going to the Parker seminar, comparing how you speak with doctors now to how you did just 6 months ago back in September of last year. How would you explain to everybody your growth in that sense, comparing to speaking on how to implement the systems of the laser and shockwave on patients and how to make money in a practice?
Yeah, it's the system. Making money is the byproduct of a great system.
Right.
And if your systems are in place and the patient is educated, the consumer is educated, then they welcome you. They allow you to partake in their healthcare. You are blessed and honored to be able to treat them, to get them where they want to go. 6 months ago, I didn't have that confidence or language. I think always as a practitioner, basketball trainer, anything that I've done as a job, it was always effort.
Right.
I would out-grind you, outwork you, out-hustle you, out whatever it took to give the best product.
Right.
Now, I believe the confidence in the results and the communication, and I have to say I'm blessed. I mean, the podcast, and I've said this to many of the companies that are interviewing us, bringing us in as brand ambassadors, is creating a level of confidence that I know that I can speak about a product and ascertain information about a person through the steps in the systems that we create, that I can create a plan for them that is going to get them a measurable result and an outcome that they desire. Right. And we could apply that to say, we could do that for the healthcare provider to get them the results that they want to use a machine and monetize it. Or I can flip around and be Dr. O'Connor in a clinical setting, treating somebody and getting them over the hump in a physical hardship, in a debilitated state. And I think that's a big thing, and we talk about it all the time. I think one of the other things that we're learning the importance of is follow-up. When we give people the gift of respect of their time, shooting them a text, an email, a call, saying, hey, I thoroughly enjoyed working with you today. If you have any questions about what we provided, the service we provided, please don't hesitate to give us a call. The patients take that and appreciate that on an entirely different level. And, and a lot of times, much like the name of this podcast, Tough Love, I mean, I'm pretty abrupt when people aren't getting better, but they keep going back to the triggers that keep hurting them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's a big issue.
Absolutely. No. And even just back in September, we were still trying to master the system in our own home at Velocity, and I feel we've came a long way, especially you just representing Velocity HP with the growth of everything, speaking with doctors, and that's what gives us more opportunity. I mean, you just got invited down to Florida in late March for the Shockwave convention to speak for one of the biggest multi-million-dollar companies that created Shockwave.
Well, actually, to elaborate on that, we're learning more about that, how it's going. We're speaking on behalf of all of them. That accreditation or certification rather is a competency, proficiency on utilizing the device. So all the big players in the market are stepping up. So look at it like for me as a sneakerhead, that would be Alo, Nike, Adidas, New Balance, whatever the case may be, and we're representing the machine, the technology, and the results.
Yeah.
And these are professors and PhD and university, instructors. And when we got invited to be the co-sponsor for the event with Softwave Technology, I was blown away. I was so thankful for Dr. John Fernandez to say, he goes, I've never seen anybody teach to where you're teaching the patient about it and the benefits. And then, you have another layer of your healthcare system come in. And after you've prescribed whatever the plan is, then they explain it and they explain the cost. And then basically they welcome the system into the treatment module, if you will.
Yeah.
And
the best part is the patient already knows about it before even stepping foot into the office.
100%. And that's huge, right? That's huge.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's what creates success, I think, with them, because to us, education is key. So coaching them up on what the science is prior to coming in, that's everything. And I know I just watched Air with Michael Jordan. So what you're going through with the shockwave, laser, local cryo with these companies, it's almost like Jordan going through Nike, Converse, Adidas. They're going back and forth seeing which company is the best fit for him and them going at him to represent their product, right?
Absolutely. Listen, I'll jump clothing lines, right? But, being sarcastic, I love me some Alo, right? And, it's one of my favorite brands to wear. But interviewing Mo from Athletic Freak and Noor, I realized that that's a homegrown mom and pop brand,
right,
that we're watching, that is luxury sports, fitness wear that could be the next it.
Yeah.
And I'm not even going to say and compare them to anybody else because they're one of one.
Right.
And I think Mo will appreciate that because he doesn't want to be compared to anybody. He wants to be his own Athletic Freak. And, and I love that about them. But I think the genuine thing that we loved, and we just found this out was, in our podcast, right? And we've got a good amount of them out there now. In all the companies we worked with, we didn't have to ask them. And the trucker hat that I worked out in, I think I just had it out in the Parker seminar, he's giving any of the viewers that hashtag tough love, and I guess, however they follow the code,
right,
will get a free hat.
Yeah.
And to me, you have to give to get, right? So going back to the very beginning of the why of this show, I went out to Vegas with, as a sports trainer, former athlete, and again, now I'm a business athlete, right? Yeah. Everything's a competition. Where I'm going, I'm not going to be average. I want to be the MVP. I want to be the baddest mofo in the room. I want to deliver. I want to conquer. That's it.
Yep.
There's nothing else that goes through my mind. When I was there, all I was thinking about was, hey, this is really expensive, and is this going to go? And then hearing, MedRate kind of bouncing around with stuff, we know how much we invest. I mean, obviously, Clean Media does a fantastic job with our stuff, putting it out there. We have picked our core 4 technologies, and our cornerstone, our pillar, if you will, is MedRay, right? And then right behind them is Cryoscience, and then the other 2 products. Yeah. And the one thing that I would say is you must be so consistent and razor sharp in how you frame that, package it, put it out there.
Right.
And, I give all props to Sean, the owner of Clean Media, because now we're seeing it. Now we're looking at finished products where we had a monster of a, Instagram business coach at like 10.1 million followers. Yeah. Come out and comment and say, hey, great stuff. Keep it going. And
it only takes one.
And that was special. That's like being for me as a basketball player, I'll never forget it. One of the guys that ran, Poconos and 5 Stars, one of the family owners played, I think, basketball at Princeton, and I could jump out of the gym. Right. So at the time, I think we were at Monmouth University, or he saw me jump at Poconos up in Pocono Mountains. And I would touch the side of the backboard and then just smash it in the front of the rim. And people would be like, wait a minute, do that again. So I would tap the side of the backboard and then float all the way out and just smash one off the front of the rim. They're like, that's wild, right? But the moral story was, you got to put it out there. When we're at these events, how do we be great?
Yeah.
And it's that communication. And I think, going back to your question, is just, you're going to grow from that. Whatever that confidence was, I could jump. Well, now I can speak about something that I'm seeing patient testimonials. And one of the, I'm seeing the results. We're getting the outcomes and we're putting them out there. because, we're blessed again, like I said, because we work hard at it, right? Clean media, we show them what we want. We show them the message that we're trying to get out there. They frame it and put it out there.
Right.
And, and I think that's a huge, huge hook,
No, 100%. And that's, we could talk about growth all day. I feel like we should save this for another day talking about growth, but to put perspective on it, we went from 1,500 to about 20,000 followers in the past 60 days. So it's getting out there. Your message is getting out there. Our message is out there. And the biggest thing is believing in that and believing in the process of what we're trying to do, coaching up practices, coaching up doctors, and you being the solo speaker. It's just you got to believe in what you believe in. That's what creates success.
1,000%. And, probably closing out the last couple minutes of this podcast today, it was communication. I know with, our first few clients that we're working with, I think they struggle to understand the importance of communication. And what do I mean with that? How important it is that your coordinator, your lead coordinator, gets as much relevant information to what's going on with that patient. Because when they're calling at that point, again, I'm a customer, I'm a client.
They're the most important person on the team.
Yes. And when your people at the top undervalue that, you're destined to fail.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that kept resonating me, down at Parker this year, or out west rather, was so many of these practitioners were like, I asked somebody, how many do you see a day? Somebody would be like, well, I see 60. The guys out west, well, I see 120. I'm like, all right, impressive.
Yeah.
And, then the funny thing about it was, and these guys were great guys. I love that Southern, brings me back to Georgia, You
got the hard Northeast doctors, then you got the Midwest who are teddy bears.
Yeah. And these guys are great. They're like, see 120. And I said, well, doc, think about it this way. At 120 patients coming in a day, just do the math on that. How many patients you got to see an hour? They're like, we just adjust.
Yeah.
Right. Understood. I said, but you're in front of me right now because you're talking about pain points and you're in these cap plans and you want to make more money. But honestly, you must just be meeting these people and going right to it to be able to literally see 120 people a day. And they're like, yes, I have no idea who they are until I walk in the room and somebody's taking a generated note, et cetera. And I said, well, think about it this way. If you could use an artificial intelligence or an intake system that asked a few more questions, that instead, if you asked the patients, and if I came in and asked those 120 patients that are going to a podiatrist for shockwave on their foot, or they're going to the PT for their elbow therapy, this and that, and you offered it and you had this modality, and just from an intake system that you could treat them, not only are you giving your patients more balanced and comprehensive care, but if you could charge for that outside the realm you're there, you're getting paid to do something in a service. And now if I'm the patient, at that point, really I'm the consumer, I'm going to say, you know what, Dr. Matt or Dr. Sean or Dr. John, Dr. O'Connor, whatever that physician is, so caring and so thorough and literally just goes through everything and like looks like they're studying a blueprint to make sure they haven't missed anything. And I think when you do that, that's when you ultimately, no matter what it is, whether it's business, healthcare, you're going to level up.
It's what makes patients stay.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, listen, today's podcast for me, talking about Vegas and talking about the investment of time and the hours there, it was an absolute success. We came away with being, again, the lead sponsor for an international event for certifying, shockwave providers. We came away with being invited to one of the largest chiropractic and physical therapy equipment, and providers
in
the world, right? And the relationship that we came away with after we broke bread that night with the MedRay, laser and technology company, we realized that, and God rest his soul, the doctor that we met that got us in it, right? And he passed 6 weeks prior, right after they wrote the big check, he passed away. What we didn't know when we were sitting there eating dinner was this was a man that created his relationships like how politics used to be, that we made a deal with a handshake. And that when he would show up, that everybody knew him, but he had nothing written down.
Yeah.
Although, AJ both of them are remarkably intelligent, again, attorneys, accomplished.
Right.
The funny thing they both said was that, he came across very kind, not simple in a bad way, but just genuine. And they both said how sharp he was and never confused the two.
Right.
That he knew exactly and strategically who he was getting at to get his devices out there.
Yeah.
And that he said, I'm okay with not having the $50,000 laser. I'll have the $15,000 to $18,000 laser. I don't need to be the richest. I'll move them all day long. I'll never have an overstock of inventory, and I'm going to be very happy.
Yeah.
And those guys picked it up right where he left off, and they're running with it.
And that's what he was, Dr. Gary. Every time I talked to the guy, it was like we were best buds in the same room.
He was
rest his soul.
The stories were adorable. They were saying that he was a big 24 karat gold watch and jewelry guy. He looked like he was like either a pro wrestler or a former NFL player. Right. And he was out wherever he came from in like some rural part of the country, and but he was like a 1%er. Like he was all in. He knew his products.
Yeah.
And when they studied the company and did their due diligence, they couldn't believe as relaxed and how it seemed like he wasn't having his stuff all together.
Yeah.
How absolutely pristine the operation was behind MedRay and their technology company.
Absolutely.
So
awesome.
Anyway, listen, thank you so much for today. Super enjoyed it. Definitely a little jet lagged. It was a very long trip. The one thing when you go as a student or a doctor getting your continuing credits, you're there and you get some breaks. When you're there and you're on and you're communicating, you're just pouring that energy into people. I give those national independent sales reps and all those people that work at all those companies so much credit because it is so exhausting mentally, physically. I could work out all day long, but mentally, like to just share those stories, it was a lot. And I say so.
The jet lag is worth it.
Yeah, without a doubt. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Today was all about growth, and you know what? You're not always going to see crazy dollars and cents with every event or every business you do, but sometimes it's about the long game and not the short money, and that you have to literally invest in yourself and invest in the relationships to really grow and prosper. And I think what we did this weekend was something that we'll look back in 3 to 5 years and say, wow, we've created something huge and it started here. Thank you so much. So anyway, thank you so much for following us today. Follow us on our platform. If you find a great value in this message, please share it. We'll look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.